Today, you'll learn more about depth of field in photographs and how you can control it. Depth of field is the part of your composition which is acceptably in focus. This varies depending on a number of different factors. These are aperture setting, lens focal length, sensor size, distance from camera to subject, and distance of subject to background, assuming your focus point is on your subject. Aperture setting is most commonly associated with controlling depth of field. It does, but not on its own. These other factors have an influence as well. The wider your aperture setting, the lower your f-stop number, the less you will have in focus. The narrower your aperture, the larger the f-stop number, the more you will have in focus. Lenses with wider aperture settings like f2.8 and below are more capable of achieving a very narrow depth of field. Using a wide-angle lens, more will appear in focus at any given aperture setting than when you use a longer lens. The longer the lens, the shallower the depth of field appears. Sensors of larger physical dimensions, not the megapixel count but the actual size, have a shallower depth of field with any lens and aperture setting than cameras with smaller sensors. This is why it's easier for a full-frame camera to produce photos with a shallower depth of field more than it's possible with a compact camera or a phone, because the sensors in phones and compacts are so much smaller. The closer your camera is to your subject, the shallower the depth of field will be. When you are taking macro photos, you need to use a narrower aperture to achieve enough depth of field. The further your background is from the subject that you're focused on, the more blurred it will appear. A background close to a subject will appear sharper than one that's further away. If you want to achieve a blurred background, move your subject further away from it. All these factors work together to control depth of field. You can decide how much or how little of your photos are in focus by controlling each of them. Sometimes you'll want to have everything in focus. The easiest way to do this is with a wide-angle lens and a high f-stop number. Keeping a good distance from your subject will help as well. Other times you may want your subject in sharp focus and your background to be blurred. The easiest way to achieve this is with a full-frame camera and a telephoto prime or zoom attached to it that has an aperture that opens up to at least f2.8. Getting closer to your subject will also reduce the depth of field. Choose a subject to photograph that you can move around and a location where you can position it a long way from the background. Use a prime lens or a zoom with a wide aperture if you have one. These are called fast lenses because they can achieve the same exposure with a faster shutter speed. Set your aperture to f8 with your subject at least 3 meters, about 3 yards, from the background. Get as close to your subject as you can so that your lens can focus on it. This will vary from lens to lens. Take a few photos. Now back up about 1 meter, about a yard, and take a few more. And back up another meter and take some more. Now repeat the process using the widest aperture, the lowest f-stop number, and then again using the narrowest aperture, the highest f-stop number. If you have time, change your lens for the widest you have or zoom out to the widest it will go and repeat the process. Do the same with the longest focal length you have. This exercise will help you see how each setting and lens affects the depth of field in your photos. It's an important creative aspect of photography to understand and to be able to control it well. Key points for this lesson are: depth of field is the part of your composition which is acceptably in focus. The wider your aperture setting, the less you will have in focus. Distance also affects depth of field. Depth of field and how you can control it. Depth of field is the amount of your photo which is in acceptably sharp focus. When you focus on a point, the whole plane that point is on, which is parallel to your camera sensor, will be in focus. A certain amount closer to and further from your camera will also be acceptably sharp. How much is sharp is referred to as the depth of field in a photo. There are a few different ways you can control the depth of field. Your aperture setting is one aspect that controls depth of field. The wider your aperture, the lower your f-stop number, the shallower your depth of field will be. Using narrower aperture settings, higher f-stop numbers, will mean you have a deeper depth of field and more of your photo will be in focus. Your choice of lens focal length also has an influence on the appearance of the depth of field. Wider angle lenses produce photos that look to have more in focus at any given aperture than tele lenses taking the same photo with the same aperture settings. The longer your lens, the shallower the depth of field will appear. Distance also factors into depth of field. The closer you are to your subject, the shallower the depth of field will be. The further back from your subject, the more you will have an acceptably sharp focus at any given aperture. That's basically all there is to depth of field. But it really is not that simple. It takes a lot of practice to really manage depth of field well. You'll need to be in control of your camera and choose your lens focal length carefully to get all the parts of the equation to add up to the result that you want. How much do you want in sharp focus? By your choice of aperture, lens, and the distance you are from your subject will control the depth of field in every photo you take. This is an important aspect of your creative control and can make or break a photo. We never really see shallow depth of field with our eyes. So when we make images with very blurred backgrounds, they are not like we naturally see. Choose your lens with the widest aperture setting that can be used at 50mm. So either a 50mm prime or a zoom you can set at 50mm. Choose a subject where you have 3 or more objects which are about the same distance apart. You could photograph trees in the local park or line up 3 bottles or other objects on a table. Position yourself slightly to one side of the lineup so you can see each of the items. With your aperture set to the lowest f-stop number, the widest it can open, focus on the object closest to you and take a photo. Then focus on the next object and then the last one, making photos each time. Now choose an f-stop that's in about the middle of the range on your lens, maybe around f8, and repeat the 3 photos. Then repeat again using the highest f-stop number on your lens. You may need to use a tripod or choose a higher ISO setting when you're using the narrowest aperture setting to avoid having your shutter speed go too slow. You can repeat all 3 series of photos with a wider lens and a tele lens if you have time. As always, take good notes about what you're doing, what you're observing and what you're thinking about as you're taking the photos. This will help you more purposefully compare your images when you're looking at them on your computer. Key points from this lesson are: depth of field is the amount of your photo which is in acceptably sharp focus. Your aperture setting is one aspect that controls depth of field. Your choice of lens focal length also has an influence on the appearance of the depth of field. Distance from camera to subject and subject to background also affects depth of field.